Top 15 TV appearances you forgot these WWE superstars made.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
15.
Edge, Vikings. Ever since former 11-time WWE champion Edge retired from professional wrestling back in 2011, it seems that the rated R superstar has been able to move into a career on the small screen instead. Edge started out by appearing in a recurring role on Sanctuary back in 2011, before moving on to become one of the main cast members on Haven. He later appeared on popular DC-based show The Flash back in 2015 as Atom Smasher, before he was seen in a cameo appearance on Private Eyes later that year. Since Haven came to an end back in 2015, it seems that Edge has been floating around the acting world until he was cast in Vikings back in 2016 as Jetil Flatness, a part that kept him on the show for 4 episodes last year. It seems that his appearance in Season 5 of the critically acclaimed show was received with mixed reviews, but proves that the former champion has successfully made the switch in careers.
14.
Rob Van Dam, The X-Files. Rob Van Dam is a former WWE and ECW champion, but he hasn't appeared on WWE TV in more than 4 years, instead opting to remain on the independent circuit, telling WWE that he will only be open to a return if the company has a serious storyline for him. RVD is still one of the most popular wrestlers of the 1990s, and it seems that he has been able to appear in a number of TV shows over the past few years, just to strengthen his already impressive acting ability. In 1995, he appeared in Superfights before being seen in Blood Moon 2 years later. He then appeared in an episode of City Guys back in 1999 before being spotted in 18 Wheels of Justice the following year. Back in 2000 he also appeared as Robert Laramie in The X-Files as part of an episode called Fight Club. RVD has quite the acting resume outside of the squared circle, but his achievements in the ring seem to dwarf this in
13.
Triple H, The Drew Carey Show. Triple H is one of the biggest names in WWE right now after being part of the company for more than 2 decades, and currently being seen as the Coup. While Triple H is a 14-time world champion inside the ring, it seems that he is another wrestler who has been able to show off his acting skills over the past few years. The games start as the main character in the film The Chaperone back in 2011, which came after his shock appearance in Blade Trinity more than 6 years earlier. It seems that he got a taste for the business back in 1998, when he first made a cameo appearance as himself in Pacific Blue. Later that year he was seen as the disciplinarian on The Drew Carey Show, which was a popular 1990s sitcom that centered around the work and home life of everyman Drew Carey. 12. Bret Hart, The Simpsons. Bret the Hitman Hart will always be seen as the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be when it comes to his talents inside a wrestling ring. But even the WWE Hall of Famer has his own resume when it comes to the acting world. He first made the switch back in 1994, when he played a prison inmate in Natural Born Killers, but this wasn't used in the final edit of the show. Later that year he was seen in Lonesome Dove, the series where he played Luther Root, before he appeared in a guest spot on The Simpsons back in 1997, where he voiced himself in the episode The Old Man and Lisa. He has since been seen in a number of other TV series including Honey I Shrunk the Kids, The Adventures of Sinbad and Jacob 2 over throughout his career.
11. The
Rock, Cory in the House. The Rock is perhaps one of the biggest wrestlers in the history of the company to have been able to make the switch over to the acting world and become a huge star. The Rock followed in the footsteps of Hulk Hogan, but managed to become a much bigger star than the Immortal One, and is now one of the biggest stars that WWE has ever created. Of course, The Rock hasn't always been the star he is today, but it does open a lot of doors for him when it comes to making celebrity cameos on TV shows. Back in 2007, Dwayne Johnson appeared in The Game Plan alongside Madison Pettis, someone who had only previously been seen in Cory in the House on the Disney Channel. It seems that The Rock decided to follow his co-star back to her regular show, and even made a cameo appearance as himself in the episode, Don't Stop Till You Get the Phone.
10.
10. Sting, Walker, Texas Ranger. Sting's wrestling career came to an end almost 2 years ago at the 2016 Hall of Fame induction ceremony, when the icon announced that he was retiring from the sport that he had been part of for more than 3 decades. It seems that Sting will be better remembered for his time in WCW and TNA, rather than his short stint in WWE, but it seems that he has also had a number of memorable appearances on TV shows over the past few years as well. He first appeared in syndicated TV show Superforce back in 1991, before being cast alongside Hulk Hogan in 3 episodes of Thunder in Paradise back in 1999. He then made a guest appearance as a biker called Grangus on Walker, Texas Ranger as part of the episode Unsafe Speed later that year. Sting was also known for his appearance in Ready to Rumble as himself back in 2000.
9.
9. John Cena, Hannah Montana. John Cena could be set to make history this year when he becomes a 17-time world champion, but it seems that over the past few years Cena has become a part-time superstar in WWE as he struggles to juggle all of his commitments outside of WWE as well. It seems that Cena has been acting now for more than a decade, and the more well-known he has become, the more he has been able to pop up in other TV shows to make shocking cameo appearances. Back in 2010, after Cena has appeared in popular kid show Fred, the movie, he was able to make a short cameo on Hannah Montana, which was considered to be one of the most popular teen shows of that era, as well as the show that made Miley Cyrus a star. Cena appeared as himself in the episode Love That Let's Go, and as part of the episode, he appears out of a magazine and tries to force Hannah's brother Jackson to read a book.
8.
8. Ashley Massaro, Smallville. Ashley Massaro won the 2005 Raw Diva Search and made her way onto the Raw roster, where she became one of the main women for a number of months. Despite the fact that she appeared on the cover of Playboy magazine back in 2007, and at WrestleMania later that year, Ashley requested a release and was granted it back in 2008, and has since dropped off the radar. While Ashley was still part of WWE earlier in 2007, she appeared alongside fellow wrestler Kane in an episode of Smallville. In the episode, Ashley was up against Lois Lane as part of one of the episodes in Season 6 of the show. While Kane was seen as a legitimate threat to Superman as his character, it seems that Ashley wasn't able to make the same kind of statement, but was able to throw down some moves, and Superman's wife ultimately lost.
7.
7. Booker T, Charmed. Booker T will be known to the current generation as the voice of Monday Night Raw alongside Michael Cole and Corey Graves, but before he was placed behind a desk, he was one of the most interesting superstars of the past decade. Booker wasn't just entertaining in a WWE ring either. It seems that he took his natural charisma over to the acting world as well. Booker made a shock cameo appearance in Supernatural TV show Charmed back in 2000, alongside Buff Bagwell and Scott Steiner. The trio appeared in a wrestling-based episode of the show called Wrestling with Demons, where they were able to wrestle with the 3 main characters of the show inside a wrestling ring. The show was about 3 witches, and the trio played the demons who were sent to fight them. Needless to say, despite the size and strength advantage, they didn't manage to win.
6.
6. Best friends, Sheamus and Cesaro. When Sheamus and Cesaro began teaming up on Raw, it wasn't meant to be a long-term storyline. They had been rivals at the time, but the company saw gold in them, as did the fans, which eventually birthed the team of Sheamus and Cesaro. Their chemistry has been remarkable since then, making them one of WWE's top tag teams in modern history. They have won the Raw Tag Team Championships 3 times, and continue teaming up today. While Cesaro has admitted to finding Sheamus to be annoying while on the road, he did add that they have become best friends. They spend most of their time together while on the road, which probably explains why they have been so successful in the ring as well. Fans expected the team to be short-lived, but their friendship and glaring chemistry have made it difficult for the company to split them up.
5.
5. Lita, Dark Angel. Lita hasn't wrestled in WWE for more than a decade, but she is still considered to be one of the biggest legends that WWE ever created. She paved the way for much of the history that the women of the company are currently being able to create. Not only is Lita a former 4-time women's champion, but she is also a legitimately tough woman outside of the ring, which was proved by her cameo on Dark Angel back in 2002. Lita portrayed a character called Thula on the show, which was filmed while she was recovering from a broken neck, which didn't prevent her from performing her own stunts as her character went toe-to-toe with main cast member Jessica Alba. Lita made quite the statement in the show, but since retirement, it seems that she hasn't decided to pursue a career as an actress like so many other former wrestlers.
4.
4. Billy Gunn, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Billy Gunn was most recently seen on WWE as one half of the New Age Outlaws, even though the group decided to walk away from the company once again back in 2015. Gunn has quite a storied wrestling history given that he's close friends with WWE guru Triple H, which could have helped him throughout the past few years. As well as making waves in the 1990s as a member of D-Generation X, Gunn also tried his hand at acting when he appeared on Sabrina the Teenage Witch back in 2000, which was one of the most popular shows on TV at that time. Unlike many wrestlers at that time, Gunn didn't appear as himself. Instead, he was seen as a character called Xavier the Avenger Prescott in the episode Salem's Daughter. This was the only cameo Gunn made in more than 10 years, before he went on to appear in The Other Guys back in 2010.
3.
3. The Undertaker, Poltergeist, The Legacy. It's incredible that Undertaker has had time over the past few decades to do anything but wrestle, given the fact that he has been pushed as one of their biggest stars almost ever since his debut. While Undertaker has been busy inside the ring becoming a former world champion and creating a streak at WrestleMania, it seems that he has also been busy outside of it. Undertaker has made a number of cameo appearances over the past few years, but most of these have been as himself. When he appeared on Poltergeist, The Legacy back in 1999, it was a nice chance to see the Deadman portraying a different character. Undertaker played the role as a soul demon chaser in 2 episodes of the show. Later that year he also appeared in Downtown as himself in 1 episode. Undertaker is perhaps best known for his appearance in Suburban Commando back in 1991, but he hasn't been able to get a role on that level since.
2.
2. The Miz, Psych. The Miz has made a career out of being seen as a star both inside and outside of WWE. He has the perfect gimmick for someone who has been in a number of films outside of WWE, and it seems to work much better for The Miz when it comes to the fact that none of his movies have done very well. Miz is a former world champion and considered to be one of the best heels in the company right now, which could be why he has been offered a number of TV show roles recently. The Miz appeared on detective comedy show Psych back in 2012 as Mario in the episode entitled Sean and the Real Girl. While Miz has been in a number of shows as himself, he has only appeared in a select few as a character. These include cameos on popular shows like Sirens and Supernatural in recent years.
1.
1. The Hardyz, That 70s Show. Matt and Jeff Hardy are two of the most popular stars to have ever set foot in a wrestling ring. Over the past 2 years, the brothers have had the wrestling world on lockdown and recently returned to WWE to reclaim the tag team championships at WrestleMania last year back in April. It seems that Matt and Jeff's incredible acting ability from their recent run in Impact Wrestling is something that the two have been working on for a number of years. Back in 1999, they appeared as uncredited wrestlers on That 70s Show as part of the episode entitled That Wrestling Show. The episode sees the main members of the cast attend a wrestling show, and also includes cameos from The Rock and Ken Shamrock. Incredibly, the duo has never made a serious step into the acting business, since acting has been their main focus for the best part of their lives.
Yeah.